Welcome to the latest edition of First State Kopites. It's episode 34 of season 3, a podcast for Liverpool supporters in Delaware and friends of those Liverpool supporters. Thanks for listening on your preferred platform or watching on YouTube, if that's where you, if you're watching on YouTube. Am I the only one waving? Oh, maybe I need an introduction. I'm Paul. I'm joined this week by Enrique, Sean, and Daz. This is very half-hearted. I think we need to up our game on this. If you're listening, then there wasn't much of a reaction to that. We are here to reflect on the last big cup week in terms of 2 cup games in a week. We were going to progressing to the semi-final of the European Cup because surely that's the most incredible thing that could have happened last week. But it's April 18th, and 2 days ago, Jurgen's mighty Reds completely outplayed Manchester City at Wembley. And now they're in an FA Cup final. Liverpool are in an FA Cup final for the first time since 2012. In honor of that, I've got some shirts from previous cup finals. I'm sure there's prizes for guessing which final they're referring to, but maybe we'll get to that. So I'm going to start with you, Enrique. Let's get to the City game. Lots of things I think we could say about it. Klopp described it as the first half as the best performance under him. Which I thought was a really interesting observation, because there've been a few really great first half performances and second half performances under him. It really was the least important of our remaining games, and until it wasn't. What was your take on, especially the first half, Klopp's comments, kind of how Liverpool played generally?
Yeah, it's actually funny you start with that, because how lucky are we that we can go 3-0 up at Wembley against City, and we can have a genuine debate about whether that's our best performance or not, right? For just about every other team in the league, that would be the performance they talk about for a decade. But if Klopp says it's our best performance, I'm not going to argue with the man, because it certainly felt like that, at least for the first 45. And it was just, I mean, and you could tell we were up for it from the kickoff. Honestly, we were right to the races right away, and they were very clearly not. And I mean, shell shocked is just the first word that comes to mind when I think about those opening minutes. And to cap it off with an early goal did so much for my health at Ruiz that day, because we deserved it, and to get our just reward is not something that always happens. But that level of comfort, and then the great American hero Zach Steffen just helping us on a little further was also welcome. But
Guardiola, yeah, I mean, Guardiola took the blame.
Yeah, well, and he should probably. But no, I mean, from top to bottom, I absolutely loved it. It doesn't concern me so much what happened in the second half. I honestly think the early goal in the second half might have been good for us. You can kind of spin it that way, because it woke us up a bit and was like, hey, just a reminder, this is Manchester City. They are, best team in Europe, if not the second best after us. And it's there's always going to be a game, even in 45 minutes. I mean, they're more than capable of scoring 3. With that being said, we also could have gone into the half up by more than 3. So it was, I think there's a lot of talk about whether this is one of the best competitive rivalries we've seen in the sport for a long time. And one thing that stands out to me about these two teams is that they, we're just not scared to trade blows every time we play each other. And it's fascinating to watch as a neutral. It's, it can be gut wrenching and exhilarating as a non-neutral, but yeah, I mean, and one thing I want to pose to you guys is, whether you guys think this is actually our best 11 now, because I've been thinking about that since the end of the game. And I mean, I think we know 8 out of 11 for sure, but there's just 3 spots, and I mean, we look good. We look good. I'd be very fine with saying this might be our best 11 now.
So feel free to answer that. I'm gonna go with Sean first. I mean, certainly some of the performances there. I mean, I had trouble actually limiting who we want to have a conversation about, because Mane was, man of the match. Thiago was unbelievable. Looked like the footballer we thought we were getting. Keita was, he's on the list too. It wasn't bad. I mean, the pressing from him was just mad in that first 15, 20 minutes. Quietly, I thought Trent had a really great game. I mean, as we keep talking about, for a shit defender, that wasn't a bad defensive performance. And I mean, it's better than Cancelo. Let's start there, who nobody seemed to want to beat up on. Kounate, I thought was pretty awesome. And the way he just eases people off the ball is unfair. I'll leave it with them. Allison wasn't bad either. Who've I missed? So, Sean, is this the first 11 then?
So I was to be honest, this is the first time in I don't know how long I actually couldn't watch either one of these games this week.
Mhm.
Usually I don't miss many games, but I just had things come up.
Let's move on to Daz then.
No, but yeah, I mean I've seen people say that it's probably our best 11 against City. Just the different attributes that Diaz. I'm assuming these are the three spots that Enrique was talking about: Diaz, Nabi, and Kounate bring. Like the attributes that they bring to the game, I think, are well suited against City. It might be our best 11. I don't know, but I mean, I think it's definitely our best 11 against City in the way that they play. It seems like I think Kounate, is an interesting one to me. I mean, obviously scoring the goals, but I mean, he's a pretty amazing player for how young he is. To be doing what he's doing, and he's so quick. I think that really, I think it helps Trent a lot, but I think it's also about who we play against. Like against teams like City, who are really quick and can hit us quickly. His pace and recovery pace and all is probably a big help. And I've seen a few pieces covering, just how kind of tactically astute Nabi was during the game, just kind of finding the right spot. City was trying to set some traps at times so that if we gave the ball to Fab or Thiago, they would kind of collapse and trap him. I think that's part of what they did last weekend. And Nabi was kind of, I'm sure they worked on this too, and they probably talked about it, but he was finding, ways kind of around that to sort of break their trap in the midfield. So, yeah, I mean, I can't speak. I mean, particularly about the City match, unfortunately, like it was Easter week and I had stuff that I couldn't get around. And because it's ESPN Plus, I wasn't able to watch it back easily like I could most matches. But so I can't speak, too much. But, the only thing I will say is that on our 3 goals, I didn't watch the full match, but on our 3 goals, I didn't think Steffen really had any chance on the first or third goal. There's some commentary that he could have saved the third, which I think is kind of ridiculous. Having watched it back, it was a great strike by Mane, and it was not only just inside the post, but I think it was moving faster than most people were acting. I mean, when you watch it, when it hits the back of the net, I mean, it doesn't trickle in. I mean, he hit it pretty hard. And so I kind of think that people were being a little bit harsh on Steffen because, yeah, it was a horrible, mistake that he made for their second goal. But I don't think he really had a chance at the other 2. So without having watched, most of the rest of the match, I can't comment. But some of the analysis afterwards they were sort of acting like he should have saved the first and third goal, which I think is just kind of ridiculous. I mean, they were both really difficult saves. So
let's touch on let's finish answering Enrique's question, and then we'll go back and touch on the coverage, which I mean, I think coverage of us generally is a bit bizarre. Because it's either we're crap and we got lucky, or the other team didn't show up, which I think was the story. Anyway, yes, we'll get back to that. So Daz, best 11 arguments for and against. No Jota in the best 11. Wow.
Well, that's somewhat Hendo slanderous too, which I will not sit and abide. Look, I think it has to be somewhat contextual too. I've carried a lot of water for Nabi. I think that most of us fall into traps with this, where there's recency bias or people look at stuff out of context. I think that Nabi was perfectly suited for this game. I think if Kevin De Bruyne had been playing or Rodri had been playing, I think that this might have been a little bit of a different conversation. And that's to take nothing away from Nabi. He played really well. One part about, and someone else pointed this out, so I'm not going to take full credit for it, but if you notice, both him and Thiago were turning in half spaces and in very tight quarters and advancing the ball that way and taking guys out of commission essentially in City's midfield. And it helped us to cleave them open a couple of times. Whereas Henderson generally doesn't look to do stuff like that. If he's got a man on, he'll control pop and move, He's not going to try and turn, like take that step and advance the ball into the space behind the man that he's just beaten. So I think with the lineup that City afforded us, I think that Naby was perfectly suited for that. And again, like I think over the last couple of weeks and potentially month, we've seen Naby become, and I think he, as he was referring to himself in the third person a couple of weeks ago, like you haven't seen the real Naby Keita yet. I think that we're getting closer to the best version of the Naby Keita that we expected to see 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's also, I don't think that you can necessarily take Joel Matip out of it. One thing I do love about Ibrahim Kounate is someone called him Debu, which I thought was pretty funny. He seems to be a player for large occasions. He doesn't shrink. Like he seems to like to bask in big occasions. The more the pressure, the more he steps up. He's made a couple of like small mistakes, but for a 22-year-old central defense, is he 22? He's right around there. He's young.
Yeah.
His poise is incredible. And he seems to have grown into it more. Like you see some of the line breaking balls that he pushes as well. He put us under pressure once with that good save that Alisson made in the second half there, where they picked him off in the midfield.
Yeah.
And I think he got a foot on Jesus's shot. And he let him know. He gave him an earful, like, let's not do that again. But I think by and large, he's very cultured and he's very poised for a kid that age.
Yeah.
Around the rest of the pitch, I think that's again, it's tough for me to take Bobby out of it. Like he's not what he was, but you've seen flashes of the brilliance from him again recently. So it could be that he's having a hard time trusting his body because he's had some pretty significant injuries in the last couple of years. So you probably see the same thing in Ox. Like he just doesn't trust his body as much as he used to. So the things that he used to do, he's probably not getting away with as much as he used to.
Yeah.
But this was a really, really dynamic, and to Enrique's point, this was a dynamic 11. Luis Diaz, he adds some moisture to my life. Let's put it that way. Like just to watch the way that he plays, he's unafraid. Like he may lose the ball, and I'm like, you'll get him next time. He just loves to stand someone up, and he's a very thoughtful player too. He doesn't try and take people on necessarily for the sake of taking them on. If he feels that he can, he'll take a pop. If not, he'll drop a shoulder, see he's not going to be able to take him, and he'll knock it and move. Yeah. But I think that this was probably our most dynamic. It's probably the more dynamic 11 that we've seen this year.
And I think what I would kind of summarize all of that by saying, whether there is or isn't, there's some really able people coming off the bench now, and probably won't for the rest of the season include Oxlade-Chamberlain. Probably won't include Harvey Elliott. Don't know if we'll see Minamino. So there's some like not bad players who we previously filled our bench with that will get a sniff with the quality that we have. Do want to say a shout out to Tim, who used to be on the podcast way back when we were doing RB Leipzig stuff. He said we should completely ignore Upamecano and go for that Kounate guy. I see nothing to disprove his insight back then. Although he did remind me of that when I saw him about 2 weeks ago. So, so do we want to talk about some of the embarrassing stuff about City, or do we want to talk about the embarrassing stuff about the commentary? I don't know where the best place to go is. Let's go with I thought ESPN coverage for this game. I mean, there's lots to clearly, or that's the way our audience watched this game. Let's start with what could have been better about their coverage. And maybe that's too long a list, but let's start with something. What we should take, Enrique?
Yeah, where to begin on it? Maybe a little praise for the team that won. Bad, but I know. We were discussing about how much time they wanted to spend on Zach Steffen, and again, it's like I get it. He's the one American on the field at the time. He also has some pretty bad highlights, and that, they want to talk about his career moving forward. Was it Shaka Hislop who's like, he's got to leave City and all that. But
yeah,
that's what they want to spend 10 to 15 minutes talking about, because that's what their audience wants to see. I don't know who's making those decisions.
Does it? I don't know. I've seen
I can't imagine that people tuning in for Liverpool versus City want to talk about City's backup keepers' career choices. So what do you say about that? And then, and Sean touched on this too. They were critical of him for that third goal. And I mean, it's a common known thing that the toughest spot for a keeper to save is the bottom corners. And Mane whipped that shot in at full speed. And don't forget, it turned 90 degrees on the way to goal. So, even if, I don't think Zach could have done any better on that shot. I don't think many keepers would have saved that shot. So it's just ridiculous to take anything away from Mane on it.
In fact, I know you used to play striker, Enrique, but and occasionally did the same thing a long time ago. But it did strike me that he hit it on the volley, and usually at my level, you would hit it at the post, and then it would end up like about 10 yards wide because it screwed that far away. And he started it off somewhere in the middle and then bent it into the corner.
I think for Steffen, just to jump in there real quick, I think that he was probably going to get painted with a different brush as a result of the way that he handled their second goal. So they're probably looking to slaughter him. And I think that there's a very real conversation about him not being the U.S. men's national team's first choice keeper either. Mm-hmm. And I think that's based entirely on the amount of minutes that he plays. I think for me, a goalkeeper needs to play. It's one of those confidence positions that why? And I think there was one, not to spend too much more time on Zach Steffen, because ESPN did a fair enough job on that.
More than enough.
Yeah. There's a couple. He's made a couple of high-profile errors, and one of the things that they did point out in the commentary during the actual game was that he did the same thing last year in the semifinal.
Oh, really? Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, against Chelsea, right?
Against Chelsea, yeah.
So none of us saw that, right? Because who cares about the FA Cup?
Well, the funny thing
it wasn't good last year. I like this season's FA Cup a lot better.
I think Steffen's a good goalkeeper. You're right; he needs to play more. But Ederson could have done the exact same thing in the week prior if Jota was as aggressive as Mane was. It could have been the exact same play.
We just talked about that off air, right, boys? Like that, if that had been Mane, there's a pretty good chance he would have done exactly the same thing to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's just like the analysis after was so focused on him and City not playing their starters and all. And I just thought it totally missed the point that we were clearly the better team, top to bottom on the day.
Yeah.
And the score line really flattered them because we could have been a lot more up than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
and to summarize it, how much they wanted to talk about Zach Steffen is evident in the fact that, even for that second goal, the mistake starts with Stones, right? Because Mane is hounding John Stones to the point where he pushes Stones back 10 feet. Stones has no option but to pass to Zach Steffen. And then he does that thing where he's immediately, telling Steffen to get rid of it. But his mistake starts there. And then even with a third one, how does nobody want to talk about the little dink pass from Thiago too, right? Because the only reason Mane can hit it so sweetly is because Thiago is at the same time quick, but it kind of just floats to Mane. So it's very easy for him to hit that volley so sweetly. But I mean, the 1-2 passing out with Trent leading up to it and then just immediately just dinks it, right? I mean, the pass was beautiful. There's probably enough moisture here with Daz on, but that's what got me right there with that pass from Thiago.
His mold is so damp.
But the thing is, Mane's finish, like he hits it perfectly. I mean, like you could not hit it any better. And it was kind of spinning away from Steffen. So it's like, even if he had gotten a hand to it, I'm not sure it would have mattered because it was moving so fast.
Yeah. So Sean, what you would have missed, because this is interesting when they showed the highlights, they missed the fact that we had the ball for about 5 minutes before that. Like they kind of knocked it from the left to the right.
Oh, Trent made a ridiculous pass.
There was all sorts going on with that goal. Like, someone should have been like showing the whole thing and pointing what a great goal it was.
Yeah. But I think that's actually just to make that to extrapolate on that point, Paul, is this might be like somewhat red tinted glasses, but both of their goals were kind of a comedy of errors on our behalf.
Yeah.
And the 2 goals outside of the Steffen one, they were really well worked goals. Like, it was a perfect ball from Andy Robertson, and Ibu just told people, like, I need you guys to step aside while I jump for this. Nathan Notke didn't have a chance. And then that third one was just absolutely sumptuous from start to finish. Like, they were well worked, goals that were well worth the viewing and the viewership. And I feel like theirs were kind of like they bounced off a couple of people, and it just happened to end up where it was. It was just kind of they were scrappy, if nothing else.
Yeah.
But
and if Pep wants to take the blame for starting Zach Steffen, he's also got to take the blame for telling Jesus to cover Kounate on the corner and Foden to cover Van Dijk, because who matched that up?
Oh, it wasn't Grealish, because Grealish was the one.
Oh, was it Grealish?
Okay. Well, he was the one who ended up on the ground. I don't know. So,
well, I think wasn't one of the points you're making, Paul, about like we need to talk about like we could talk about the kind of how silly the mistakes that City made, because if that lineup was a mistake. I understand that Kevin De Bruyne was probably still carrying a knock. Rodri was out, and he probably didn't want to risk people, because I think at the end of the day, and bigger brains than mine have pointed this out, that there's more peril for him in trying to jam people in that he knows that he can't. Yeah. He has to look at the next 4 or 5 fixtures. He's also in a European Cup semifinal, Champions League semifinal. I'm showing my age here.
So whether we believe everything he says, he said, though, the only fit players he had were Mahrez and Rodri.
Well, I don't understand. I don't understand why he didn't use Rodri.
Because the game was lost. I think the basic thing, he thought the game was lost, and if they had got back into it, then he would have had Rodri playing another hour after playing in Madrid, playing against us, and then then you got issues when they turn around and play Brighton. So I think he definitely was making decisions like not to bring people along because he didn't want to play in for the extra time.
It works for him too, to some degree, that he doesn't have to, if they had their strongest lineup there, we probably still would have won if we played at that same level. And with how intense of a game they had at midweek while we were able to rest our guys. But, probably does more mental harm if he goes out with his strongest lineup and they lose. Whereas now he gets to tell, all his boys that, look, that wasn't our best. We all know it. We move, wipe it away. We move on. Let them have the FA Cup. We focus on the league. So I think he can spin it in a way that he wouldn't have been able to if we had that same performance against a starting midfield with Rodri and De Bruyne and all the guys that were watching from the bench just there.
And I think if Klopp was in his shoes, he would have done the same thing. He would have rotated because he would have prioritized the league and the Champions League over the FA Cup.
Yeah. I think Pep's fully aware we have the momentum.
Yeah. And honestly, it's crazy to say, but our squad is much deeper. I mean, which is his choice, because he's the one making the choice as to who to spend the money on. Yeah. But we have a better squad right now, top to bottom,
You should remind me, Sean, what one of our end of season episodes has to be all the pundits who said we weren't going to win anything, and all the pundits who said because of our weak squad.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, that was the line of the day at the beginning of the season.
One more thing, and this for you, Sean. I know you didn't see it, but I thought you would have enjoyed this particularly. I don't know if you saw this far back in the coverage, Enrique does, but at the beginning, Kay Murray asked the genius Steve Nicol and his Scottish buddy
Burnley.
They began it by saying, "Is it worth the risk of playing Trent at right back?"
I went back and looked up some of that Steve Nicol commentary after you said something, Daz, and I was just like, "This is." I mean, I know the guy's terrible, but it's. I mean, he's a horrible analyst. I mean, it's like you said. I mean, he's a great player, but it's unfortunate that so many of our former players for Liverpool are just awful analysts.
So I missed that, but try to walk me through whatever logic you could.
I mean, he said so many dumb things. It's hard. I mean, the one that stuck out to me was. He was the one that was focusing in on and criticizing Steffen for the third goal, saying, "Oh, he should take a step here. If he takes a step, he's not going to get down for the ball." It was in the goal too fast. It was like just lazy.
Oh, resting Trent, like he's coming off a 1 week rest.
No, the Trent thing is idiotic.
No,
it's just the same.
I'll explain where it came from. so that they stop. Basically, they have a constant mantra, which is Trent can't. We all know Trent can't defend. Like multiple of them say this, and so she ended up being like, "So is it worth the risk of playing him?" And I personally think she was being provocative because I'm pretty sure she seems pretty smart. I'm not sure she thought that was true. And then they were trying to defend their comments about how bad a defender he was. And then, of course, he has a great game in defense, and no one says anything. Because
it happens. I mean, we know it happens with Trent all the time. It drives me absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
like more than almost anything with the team, because Trent does make mistakes as a defender. We also ask him to do 5 times as much as any other fullback in the world, both in attack and defense. And he's often on an island by himself out there. And I watch like Chelsea, and they got Reece James playing wing back with a back 3, and he gets beat. When I watch him, I feel like he gets beat just as much as Trent does, but they act like he's some kind of world-class defender.
I was just
I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, if you played Trent at wing back, he would never get beat because he's got three center backs.
I can't remember which Benzema goal it was, but James is awful on it.
Oh, God.
And my first thought was, if that was Trent.
And people act like it's blasphemous for pointing it out. I mean, I've done it, like, because every time he makes a mistake now, I point it out. And people act like I'm being ridiculous trying to defend Trent. I'm like, it's just reality. If that was Trent, they'd spend an hour on it the next day.
So
that's when you go back in someone's Twitter history and you go, this you, this you, this you.
Oh,
it's crazy.
Did you guys not hear?
He's a better pure defender than any other fullback I think England has, just from defensive.
You didn't hear the quote about Reece James against Real Madrid?
No.
Basically it said, well, now we know what Reece James at right back looks like in a back 4. He's the new Glenn Johnson.
Oh, but then what was it? Their game, the most recent game, they
Sean, that was funny.
Some headline where he locked up the other team's defense. I'm like, what? What did they go back to a back 5? Like, what are you talking about? Like, how does a wing back lock up a defense?
Oh, I forgot.
It doesn't even make any sense.
We mentioned Chelsea, and now, Sean, we're going to have to come back to a different topic. Anyway.
I know. Sorry, I can't stand it. The Reece James thing particularly drives me nuts.
Let's not dwell too much. So I'm not going to mention. I'll do one more quick thing because I think it's important to talk about fan bases after that game. But I watched a bit of the Palace game. You're not allowed to comment on this, Sean. And it strikes me, I'm a bit confused by Rudiger and Azpilicueta aren't been mentioned as natural targets for Atletico Madrid. Because honestly, the way they played against Palace seemed to me a pretty good fit. A lot of mugging going on, a lot of late tackles, a lot of complaining about the officials. Anyway, just a thought. Let's move on. Let's you can take it in a different direction, but I do think it's worth highlighting how embarrassing is it you don't even come close to filling your end of the stadium, which is as if you're just too good for this, and then some of the morons that do show up and want to interrupt the minute silence for Hillsborough.
Well, that was that Pep came out and denounced that, which I thought was
spot on. Yeah,
I believe that the entire organization wasn't exactly. But I saw someone on Twitter say it's the working class man couldn't make it down for the match. I'm like, oh yeah, because Liverpool
the rich guys,
yeah,
right.
Just drowning in pounds up there. Like these are the same Scousers that you guys like to dub as bin dippers or hubcap thieves. Like those well-off Scousers that managed to make it down. Oh yeah, get the hell out of here. What type of shit that is.
Yeah, there were a lot of mad comments I saw as excuses for all sorts of city things. But they
don't come to their own stadium. Are they going to travel down to? They had to go because remember the trains weren't running.
Yeah,
there was another one of the cock-ups, but we managed to make it.
Yeah,
in droves.
I did love the tweet which said. Did you want to share that with me? It was the image from Jaws about we're going to need a bigger boat. We're going to need a bigger flag to cover all the empty seats. Yeah,
we're going to need a bigger flag.
Yeah. They're so entitled. It's just unbelievable, actually. Yeah. So we should have started the show. Two things I don't feel we've given enough attention to. One is obviously it was the anniversary of Hillsborough, which led to the minute silence, 33rd anniversary. If you guys haven't seen it, I haven't read it yet. The piece by Simon Hughes in The Athletic is is kind of the right side of the paywall. So it's got a whole load of like personal descriptions of what it was like on that day. It's a bit harrowing, but it's highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. And then these morons booing. Yeah. Anyway.
One of the things about that I'd never, in all these years, that I'd never really paid much homage to was like the suffering of the people that, the family members left behind, the people that made it, and the survivor's guilt that came from that. And there's been quite a few suicides as a result of it too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
It's just like that's someone of the things that you don't really, it doesn't really get much column width. And I was just struck. I went down a rabbit hole, and I was like, wow, this is like, it's ruined lives. It's ruined families. It's horrible.
Yeah. We had was it 2 years ago, Sean? We had Damon Cabana and Richie, who owns Kopite Clubber, one of the kind of Liverpool fan gear websites. And their conversation about it, it's probably, I'll try and go find it actually, and try and kind of put it back on the feed. But they did a really good job actually of just kind of talking about their experience. The article though kind of went to a whole other level, just in terms of like how people's lives have been wrecked, how they really couldn't get out their minds, the smell, and the everything they experienced on that day. It was I think must read for anyone who thinks this is something to be glossed over and made banter about.
Yeah, and that article it, reminded me of that conversation, because they were saying all the same things as that story that the athletic article opens up with, about it's not, people just kind of put it behind them because that's what you did. It was the 80s, it was Liverpool. You didn't think about the mental scars. And I think, it seems like a lot of people that were there did the same thing. And it's, it was just kind of these memories and demons that hung around with them for years, like Daz said. And they talked openly about it, and they mentioned that it really had an impact on the entire city, because there were so many people that were impacted that way by it.
Yeah. So I'll try and find the episode, and I'll put it out there. I think we're done with City, because clearly that fan base doesn't deserve to win anything else ever again, or have any semi-finals or finals anywhere meaningful. Be interesting to see what their excuse is in Paris, assuming that they get there. Okay, do you want to pivot to a lighter topic, which is the bizarre 3-3 against Benfica? And I'll go back to you, Enrique. 7 changes. I don't know if did anyone else watch this back, but I did watch it back, and it was like, how is this 3-3 again? And there was a bit of a theme, because I thought we should have taken more of our chances on Saturday, but it's certainly in this game, 3-3 looked. If you'd just seen the result and then watched the game back, you'd been like, how did this happen?
Yeah, so I'd love to see if Sean actually has the XG for this game, because I don't know. But I know what you mean, though. It felt like we could have been up by a lot more. Credit to Benfica, though. They exploited our back line very well. I mean, there are several times there where I was like, well, that has to be offside, and it wasn't. And it was something they clearly had studied. And to touch on Darwin Núñez, I mean, he is a talent, and really hope he doesn't go to United, go anywhere else. We'll see about that.
Well, you should look the fact that his compatriot doesn't want to play for them. That should be a starting point.
Well, yeah. So hopefully he's in touch, right? But yeah. I mean, it was an entertaining game. It comes with the comfort of having the cushion when you go into it, right? So, even if they claw back, 1, 2, 3 goals, it was still just a fun day out for me watching the game. You never felt worried, and you always knew, well, we have all these weapons on the bench if we need to go to them. But I love the squad depth. I'm completely fine with how many times we got exposed, because the thing about the high line we play is, we're trying to, we're essentially playing with, microscopic measurements of onside or offside. And that's something that you're only going to get with a backline that plays together all the time. I don't know how many times this backline had played together, but I imagine it's single digits, or it's, it's like, you can't expect them to just come out and play exactly the way we always play perfectly, right? Otherwise every team would do it. They wouldn't have to practice all the time with our high line. So I'm not too worried about that. I wouldn't expect to see that high line get caught out so many times if it's our starting four. It was a good fun game. That's all I got to say. While City's B team was losing a semifinal in the FA Cup, our B team was getting to the semifinal of the Champions League. So that's the way I look at it.
So a couple of things, and Sean, you might have. There are a few different XGs I saw, but one was like 1.9 to 1.06, and there was some talk of whether in the 1.06 those chances where they didn't score were actually offside, like the ones that Allison saved. So well, I would have thought our XG was higher, frankly, but I guess the reason I thought we should have scored these chances was they weren't that easy chances to score. So did you see this game, Sean? You saw this
I watched. I was able to watch most of it back. I didn't see it live.
Yeah,
but
probably was better watching it and you knowing the score, actually.
Yeah, it was. I'm sure it was much better. I was following it live, and it was kind of crazy. But it was, I mean, to me, like the whole game was about the fact that we had, it was the first time that back four played together, and Klopp clearly approached it like, he thought that we had the tie settled before, it started, and it was kind of rotating ahead of playing City. And we just got, we got the back line wrong, whatever, twice, if not three times. I guess the one was like a deflection off Milner, which was kind of fluky. But the other two, it was just, we made mistakes on that high line, and, all the pundits sure love that. You eat that up, they all can't stop talking about how dangerous and risky our high line is. And it's like, we have one of the best defensive records like anywhere. So clearly it works most of the time. And it's also fundamental to how we play. So you'd think at some point they would stop going on and on about how we shouldn't play a high line. But
so I'd like to give a shout out actually to any of you listen to the Guardian football podcast. But Barry Glendenning, it's a level above, I think, a few of the others. Barry Glendenning, who's constantly on it, talked about after the Benfica game, three things. He said, well, Klopp said he didn't think the way he changed the team, the people shutting down the passing lanes did as good a job as they could, which in part you could attribute to Milner's rustiness. But he also said that the reason you play a high line because it enables you to give the opposition no space,
right?
And the risk is totally worth it.
Yeah, it's fundamental to how we play, is because when we lose the ball, we're able to get it right back.
Yeah,
and
well, the third thing is like you have to ask yourself, if you think it's a bad idea, why do all the best coaches do it?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you can see it when we play. It's like when we lose the ball, we're able to press them quickly. They lump it forward, and then 90% of the time, our center backs or Fab win the header. And that's how we're able to control games. But so we got it, a little bit wrong a couple times, and they stung us on it. The XG, I think, it varies a little bit depending on, there's a bunch of different models, but like Info Goal was, I think they had like 0.85 to like 0.1779 or something. But across the two legs, we were at like, it was like 5.5 to 2, basically. So it's like we were clearly the better team. And I'm sure if we played Van Dijk or more of our starters, in the second leg, we probably don't give up at least one of those goals. It was it looked like an entertaining one, especially like if you were there watching it live, but doesn't really seem like the tie was ever in doubt.
And it's worth saying on some of the XG that you just have to, you've said this before, you have to be careful with it on game by game. Because I saw one XG for Saturday, which gave City the edge because they gave Silva a 0.65 for his tap in at the end of the game, and that's what gave them like a higher XG than us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, right. That happens. Like
Kounate was
the models,
0.09.
like 538 model is
Yeah.
different than Info Goal, and
Yeah.
there's a couple of them, a
Yeah.
couple other ones too that I'll look at sometimes. But yeah, I mean that one's obviously going to be high because there was nobody there. But the reason it doesn't really track like the lead up to the play. Like the reason he had that chance is because it went through Ali's leg.
It deflected, actually. Deflected and slowed down because it hit
right. Yeah. So
I'm gonna kind of wrap up as the European Cup chat, because I think we'll have a lot more to say about this when the semi-final rolls around in 9 days. 9 days, yes, a week on Wednesday. Any initial thoughts? I'll leave you with the last word on this, and then we'll talk about what's happening in this upcoming week when we return to the Premier League. But any thoughts about Villarreal? On the one level, it's like they're clearly the lowest ranked team. They were the lowest ranked team in the quarterfinals, but they've got past Bayern, they got past Juventus.
I think that we won't make the same mistake that Bayern made. Klopp will not underestimate them. I think Mr. Good Evening, it sets up really well in cup competitions, because he can drill his team to the nth degree. I think this is the last competition that they're in, whereas we rely on rhythm. They can do the rougher thing with the different colored flags if they need to. We make no mistake about it. Klopp will not shortchange this group at all. I think that after what I saw on Saturday, we have our tails up, and the only people that are going to beat us now are us. It comes. One of the things I wanted to talk about or go back to was when in the Benfica game, Klopp said the goals that they scored were my fault. The goals that we scored were on the back of some brilliance from our guys. So, and I understand what he means. It's like he tried out a back line, never played together. So that's not going to happen against Villarreal. It'll be his starting lineup. You might even see exactly the same lineup that he put out against City. Start the Villarreal game to try and having 5 subs. I think we'll be in good shape for exactly the same reason that Sean was talking about. It's not just our depth. We have these guys are battle tested and hardened at this point. Is Minamino a great choice to start off with? Probably not. But the guy's proven that he can win games for you, and he's done it a couple of times. So I don't know. I can't imagine anyone wanting to face us right now. And no matter what Rannick says, if he could give us problems, sure. I'll if you think so, crack on with that, mate. But Klopp will not say, "Oh, boys, you can take it easy on this one." Even though some of our guys in the Benfica game where Mo Salah was like 6 or 7 yards out and he opted to try and flick it to Firmino so he could get his hat trick. I'm like, who are you?
Yeah. that is not a man who necessarily thinks he's desperate need of a goal, is it? I said that to you, Enrique, at the time, right?
Yeah, and I think I said the underlying numbers for Salah have not changed.
Right.
Yeah, other than his finishing, everything has been very consistent. I think this stat's probably a week or two old now, but I think it was like pre-AFCON, he had beaten his XG. He was beating his XG by about 4.5 goals. Post-AFCON, he's losing to his XG by about 4 goals. So, so he should have a few more goals than what he's got right now. But if you look at like his expected numbers and everything else that would lead up to it, he's not out of form. And yeah, like you said, it doesn't strike me as a player that believes he's out of form. It's just, I firmly believe when it comes to Salah that, we're one Salah goal away from the dam bursting. and I think it was the Anfield rap that said, all it could take is 1 goal and then Salah could win us 3 competitions.
Well, and the other part of it is people always overlook how important Salah is for us as a creator and a playmaker. He has like 11 assists on the year in the league, I think.
Yeah.
So he brings a lot more than just scoring goals.
He also dives a lot. Don't forget that. Our pundits are like
yeah, right.
Oh,
When's the last time you saw him dive? I mean, neither he or Mane could ever be accused of diving anymore because they never get a call, even when they get fouled.
But Sean, what about that Kai Havertz card for him diving?
No, don't go there.
Yeah, I thought we put a kibosh on Chelsea.
Diving Chelsea bastard. Yeah, we know. That's what they do.
I'm not taking the bait. Too obvious, Dad.
Oh, yes. Okay, let's move on to upcoming week. So a lot of the pundits who we've already talked about seem to not want to give Liverpool a lot of credit for a lot of things. Have said that our schedule is more difficult than City's, and I think there's some assumption there's jeopardy in playing United and Everton at home. Got to think of all the teams we could be playing in the next couple of weeks. I'll start with you, Enrique, because Chaz looking at me like, don't say this.
I get what you mean. Like any other team would love to go up against the two biggest banter clubs right now, back to back. And it should be 6 points. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried just because of the history that is there. And in the same way, when we were playing David Engel and Lucas Leiva and going up against a great United side, I was like, well, we'll give them a fight because we'll always give them a fight. Now it's reversed now. And as bad as United are, I do expect them to turn up against us because they have their history and legacy to protect. Now, whether that will be anywhere good enough, I don't know. I mean, I watched their game against Norwich, and I'll tell you, Teemu Pukki has been starved for service all season long. And what's that guy's name? Kieran Dowell in the midfield was just picking their pockets and just able to feed ball after ball to Pukki. I mean, not enough has been made, dude. Like they gave up a 2-goal lead to Norwich, and Norwich could have been 3-2. David De Gea had a brilliant save from a Rashika shot before Ronaldo got his jammy winner, right? Somehow he made the keeper's hands turn into fog. And
so Norwich's XG far exceeded United's XG.
And it very much felt that way watching it. So we really should not be worried. I don't think they're going to give us problems. I'm starting to see why they play Fred and Scott McTominay now, because they really don't have anyone else. I'm sure they're going to put Matic in just to shore things up. But if they line up against us with that same midfield they went up with Norwich, we'll run them over. So they almost have to play Matic. And then that just also makes me feel great that, they might be playing Matic against us.
Well, it was weird. We can come back to you, but I'll go to Sean next. It was weird on one of the Anfield Raps podcasts where I think it was Team Talk, where they talked to the opposition view. The United guy, who's generally very reasonable, was talking about like, well, McTominay and Fred just have to come back in for this, otherwise we'll get killed. And nobody said to him like, I think they're out injured. But I think they're out injured.
It looks that way. Way.
Well, maybe they just don't want to play. I don't know.
Oh, my pancreas.
Playing in midfield for this shower is awful. I'll take a week off. So, Sean, am I too bullish on, especially, let's start with United. I feel like we can rotate actually against both of these teams, just because neither of them, probably United carry more threat. So therefore I might be more reluctant to rotate the defense, but everywhere else.
I mean, I wouldn't.
Let's start.
I wouldn't discount either one of these games, but they're both at home, which I think is a big part of this too. Mm-hmm. And our crowd's going to be up for both of them. I actually I to be honest with you, it sounds crazy. Like I'm a little bit more nervous about the Everton match than United, just because I think they're going to come out, play like shit houses, and try to injure our players.
We'll rotate more in Everton as well.
United, the only I don't know. The only way that I can see United hanging with us is if they play like Fred, Matic, and McTominay in midfield and just do the park in the bus, try to hit us on the counter. I think that's the only way that they can hang with us. I really don't think that they can match us because their midfield's just not good enough. And if they play Matic, then he's 40 years old. He's got no pace anymore, so they'll have to sit back. But that's not.
I don't think they can play Pogba.
Style. I mean, they could play Pogba.
Well, he got booed right off by the fans.
Yeah. I mean,
so did they play though?
They could do that.
Like they had Lingard and Pogba in it too, in front of the defense.
Like it was, you could audibly hear the stadium booing Pogba as he went off, and I was thinking it was at the last game they play him. But you're right, maybe they don't even have any other options.
He might find an injury too, right?
I mean, that's been my biggest thing with United. Not that I want them to succeed, but I'm like, why do they keep playing a two-man midfield? They don't have the players to play a two-man midfield, and if it's Fred and McTominay, it's just not going to work against good teams. They just, they can't control the game. So if they make some kind of major switch like that, then like maybe they throw a curveball. That's the only thing I could possibly see giving us any trouble.
Yeah.
But
so I think that I'm almost certain they're out with not McTominay, Fred are not playing. He always seems to have to accommodate Fernandes and Ronaldo.
I doubt we'll see Ronaldo.
I don't think we'll see Ronaldo, especially with the.
Oh, possibly, yeah. No,
his.
Yeah.
I'd say the only one that would worry me is Alanga, though, just because he has that youthful ignorance of not realizing how bad everyone else around him is.
I could see
Alanga actually.
I could see him getting sent off.
Now we're clutching at straws. Come on. I'm concerned about Maguire corners. Let's whatever.
Yeah,
usually their corners. Our corners.
At Everton, they'll be fired up. Lampard will probably yell at Klopp again. I don't think that they'll get anything from it.
Bad though.
I know they're terrible, but I don't think we're going to have a problem with either one of these teams. But
Everton, honestly, I think could be the worst team in the league right now.
I know they're very bad. You know my thoughts about Lampard as a manager.
Yeah.
But it seems like one of those where it's a derby and their players are going to be up for it, and maybe they catch some luck. But I don't think they will. But if United roll out there with McTominay and Fred, we're going to destroy them just like we did earlier this season. It's just they can't hang with that.
Yeah, I can't imagine who they're going to pick. Actually, I think it's clutching at straws to go for the young Swedish guy, to think that he'll make a difference. Yeah, good lord. But so Daz, we could dwell more on United. We could dwell more on Everton. What's your prognosis for the next week? 2 big home games. Always good to be playing at home at this time of year.
These are not dwellings that I want to get into. Look, I think that this is one of those where we have to play the team and not the occasion.
Yeah,
I feel in if that's the case, on paper and on current form, neither of these teams should be able to hang with us. And I'm way more bearish about this because there's still 2 of the biggest matches on the calendar, and whether or not their team can hang with us, it's still a Manchester United team and they're still playing Liverpool. It's still an Everton team and they're still playing Liverpool. And I'm with Paul. I'm with Sean on this. My major concern is Richarlison doing Richarlison things, Kenny doing Kenny things. Pogba, if he plays, doing Pogba things, losing his rag and going over the ball on people. And again, who are the referees for these matches? Do we know yet? And I hate to have to do this, but you have to take into account who your officials are.
I need to talk to my researcher.
Because look at the way that Oliver refereed. He allowed Fernandinho to kick lumps out of people and did nothing about it. If this is an Atkinson or a Taylor, which is there's as good a chance as anyone of those guys being on those matches.
Did someone say that Atkinson was the referee at the United game?
Of course, why not? So that means that some of our guys are going to go 30 feet in the fucking air because he'll allow it.
Are you looking at that right now, Sean?
I'm trying to find it. Yeah,
we're looking at a penalty if Atkinson's the referee.
But Everton.
I'm not necessarily worried about us getting a penalty. I'm worried about us
get fouls. Yeah. No,
I'm worried about some of our guys leaving the field because of chainsaw injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. That's the biggest worry too. Is how much are they trying to hurt us before the game against Villarreal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because that's that. I mean, they don't neither. I mean, well, I guess United still have things to play for technically, but you know, for their season, either one of them beating us will be like the greatest thing they've done all season.
It's going on their DVD,
Or even if, honestly, even if they come out and injure one of our players and we don't win the league or something as a result, they'll I don't know. I'm sure their fans will celebrate that. So
you have to look at Everton. Everton needs points.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to play to try and win, which could play into our hands. United, if they're looking to try and make fourth, are going to have to try and come at us. And both of these teams have been stung. They've been embarrassed at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm cautiously optimistic, but my major concern is that we end up, because we're still in the business of winning games, and how much rotation are you actually going to be able to accomplish on either one or both of these games without interrupting rhythm? Or my suspicion is you might see Henderson playing the Fabinho role that you may well see. Well, I think Matip will come back in for Kounate.
Yeah. You
might even see Chimikas come on for one of the other fullbacks will probably miss either game. But again, like, we're still in the business. Like, City still has that point, and we need to. The only way that we can guarantee to our chances of winning, well, not guarantee necessarily, that would be a bit hyperbolic here, but by winning all of our games, we will put all of the pressure on City that potentially could cause them to crumble. So it's, I think there's less peril in either of these games this week than we probably would have said 2-3 months ago. But these aren't games that can be taken lightly, and I don't think that any Liverpool fan would be lying, or they'd be lying if they said that they weren't a little bit concerned, because again, they are big matches against teams that are traditionally come for us, and we've gone for them in the same breath. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll get the business done against both of them.
I have less of your caution, because I think about the team. So I'll do one quick wrap up. We don't need to talk about other teams' schedules in Europe for them. If I think about the team that Klopp picked was it 2019, where he picked Shaqiri and Origi, and he still battered Everton 4-1, and then they weren't playing it half as badly as they are now. I guess they lost another manager along the way, was having beaten them. So I understand your concern about like the danger of people like actually there's a few of them who I think have got a thuggish side to them. Godfrey is one who's laid a couple of boots in people's heads. Richarlison is another. But from a football perspective, they are the games they've won against Newcastle and United were at home, and basically it was the crowd that kind of dragged them home. And the United game was like anti-football, much more than Atletico Madrid anti-football. So let's go around one more time. So I'll go with you, Enrique. We have big picture, 7 league games left, minimum of 3 cup games, maximum of 4. So we'll have played almost every game, if not every game that we could possibly have done this season. If you think about these 2 matches in that context, what are your thoughts about priorities?
Ooh, priorities.
Villarreal.
Yeah, no, it has to be. I'm gonna stick to the party line that we get out of the squad, which we only look at the game right in front of us, and I think that is the right way to approach the rest of the season. Yeah, no, I think it is. Let's not get ahead of ourselves too much. That said, I did see an interesting stat about it. No matter what we are, how to phrase it, no matter what, we will be a team that's had the quadruple dream alive longer than anybody else, and I love that.
Yeah,
I love that, and long may that continue. Now, listen, the way I see it, I'm hoping the United game goes, and the way I think I see it is, I think we can get an early one. We can shake them up with that early goal, and hopefully they go into their shells by not wanting a repeat of what happened before. and then we can just see it out comfortably, 2-3-0 from there on out, not exert too much. The Everton game, I think I'm a little bit more scared of because they are looking at relegation, and they will try to kick lumps out of us and injure us as much as possible. And I think even if they get relegated, if they stop us from winning the league title, they would see that, as a huge win or almost as a trophy for them, I'm sure. But I think, we got to. So personally, okay, let me answer this. Personally, my priority would be I want to just crush the league and take any advantage of City slip up.
Yep.
I think, yes, Villarreal in the near future is the most difficult game that we should be focused on. If we're going to rotate, then rotate these 2 games before Villarreal. But I think the team's just going to focus one game at a time. I think we touched on it earlier on in the podcast when we're able to debate between 16, 17 players who makes our best 11, that we have the numbers to compete on all fronts. And I believe it was Mane who said in an interview that, we should be competing on all fronts with the squad we have at this point. So they all are in the right headspace. I think the mentality monsters are back and they're ready to charge forward and get 11 wins the way I see it. I don't see it playing out any other way. So how's that for caution optimistic?
I love it. It sounds like James Milner is playing against Everton is what I heard from all.
Actually, that's a good shot. I would take that. Kick lumps right back out.
We'll sort those bastards out.
Yeah.
So Sean, I'll ask you similar question about kind of looking at. Don't have to talk about James Milner, but I think I feel like he's playing on Sunday for sure now, given the warnings you've posted for me.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me to see Milner or Henderson. I think Daz, that's a good shout. I could see Henderson coming in as 6 on that game against Everton. Because I think when Henderson plays the 6, it suits him better when it's a team that's not coming after us, when he can kind of just sit back and dictate play. Whereas, I think Fabinho is more of like the Hoover vacuum. I mean, he's a great passer too, but so I could see that. I mean, I think the fact that they're both at Anfield is a huge advantage for us. If we were playing away at either one of those matches, I'd be a lot more worried. But I think given where we are in all 4 competitions, the crowd's going to be hyped. I mean, I like us to win both matches. And then I do think, because Klopp's been rotating a lot lately, I think he likes his options better than he ever has. So he's doing a lot more rotating, and I could see him rotating ahead of Villarreal. We might see Milner and Hendo in midfield on Sunday. I don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me if it's, if Thiago and Fabinho don't start that game. But I like us to win both. I think I think the trickiest match we have left, honestly, is going to be Spurs. I could see us potentially dropping points in that one, but they're hit or miss. Sometimes they play really well, sometimes they're terrible. So, and Villarreal, I was reading a little bit about Villarreal. They're rated, ahead of Man United in most rankings. They're kind of right around Spurs and Arsenal for global, football ranks. I think they're like 15th. So they're not, I mean, and Klopp won't, but we can't take them for granted at all. They're a really good side. They're 7th in La Liga, but it's weird. Like, their underlying numbers are a lot better than that. They're a dangerous team. I think we'll make sure that we're ready for that one.
Yeah. So the one of the things I would say is I could make any team. I feel like I can make any team seem scary. I just feel like these 2 coming up don't feel in that level. I'll go to you for the last word, Daz, because I could see jeopardy in Newcastle away. They've won 6 games at home, I think, on the 5 or 6 games on the run. Southampton, who knows what you get with them? We're going to play them away. They get beat 6-0 by Southampton and then somehow turn around and beat Arsenal. And Tottenham, I think, is a first shout. Looking forward to being at that one. Daz.
You bastard.
Well, only if we win, right?
Yeah. So, look, Klopp's not looking past anything. He is. because he has to prepare like that party line of we only look at the game in front of us is absolute codswallop. And I think that Paul Cope was talking about that today on the review. It's like it's impossible that he's sitting down with his sports scientists, he's sitting down with his crew, he's sitting down with the players. Like there's a ton of balls in the air. And to your point, like if we play in the Champions League, like if we win both of the, well, if we get through the semifinal, we played in every game available this season to us. And I think someone was saying there's only 5 teams that have done that before. It's PSV, Bayern, Barcelona, Inter, and the last one evades me, but people have done it. But I don't think there's no one in England that's done it. So it's a remarkable achievement. And to think that I don't think that any of the players in their heads are prioritizing one versus the other. I think that all of them, and you've seen some of the social media posts by the players are like they're like, fuck it, we're gonna do this. So I don't think that the players are prioritizing one versus the other. Would they like? The thing is, like they've won the Champions League. They've been in another final in the Champions League. Of course, it'd be great to get into a third one, into a third final. But like that quadruple's got to be. It has to be like just the prize, right? That's the piñata that's almost low enough to be able to smack the shit out of, and see all the candy come out of it. Yes, personally speaking, I'd love us to see us win the league, if nothing else, for the banter to say that we have the same number of leagues as United, because I know that you'll be able to see the piss boiling from our coastline in the United States. So I don't think that the players are prioritizing one over the other. I think at this point now, it'd be churlish to suggest that Klopp wouldn't say that he wouldn't like to win the FA Cup. Before, he didn't really give a shit about it, but now he's actually in the FA Cup.
I'm there with him, yeah.
And on current form, and I will say this, and I'll put this out there: if Chelsea played like they played against Palace against us, I fancy our chances a lot more than I did in the League Cup.
Yeah.
No, Carabao, whatever the hell it's called. Carabao,
Littlewoods, Rumbelows,
Calling,
Worthington,
Worthington.
Any of those things.
I take a stab at Daz's pub quiz. I think Celtic's at 15.
Is it?
It's like a 1960 something Celtic team that won every.
67. They were the first British.
Was it 67? That sounds
European
right.
Cup. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I think
they were in another final. They lost. Could have been
I got into a deep hole about other teams that had done quadruples, and they listed that Celtic team as a team that had done it before. So no team in England, you're right, but
must have been 67 then, because that's the only time they won the European Cup.
That has to be it then. Yes.
Well, it's also not that often that same two teams are in the League Cup and the FA Cup final. It's kind of an unusual one.
Yeah, and then you see Twitter posts like, "Oh, the league is gone. It's only these teams that ever win it." It's because we're fucking good.
Yeah, I mean the thing that, I guess this is like not the right mentality on my part, but I worry that we don't win a couple of these and then people act like it's not a great season. Like the fact that we are where we are makes it a great season, even if we don't win anything else. I mean, we're competing on four competitions. This late in the season, nobody's ever done it. The odds are in our favor, I think, at this point.
Yeah. I think history's going to look very kindly on this team.
Yeah, absolutely. At the same time, it's like, I do want us to come away from this era with enough silverware, because if we don't, then you'll look back and be like, man, we could have won more. But the team's just great to watch, though. Yeah. It's awesome to watch, and I love Rafa, but compared to the Rafa teams, this team's a lot more fun to watch sometimes.
Yeah. I don't think anyone's comparing like who's the greatest Liverpool team. Rafa's team is not in the conversation, right?
I mean, they were very good teams, but it was more like scrappy. It wasn't this kind of like beautiful football.
So,
having said that, he did take us to 2 Champions League finals.
Yeah, absolutely. And what, in 3 years, 2 years? Yeah. I mean, his record was incredible, and who knows what he would have done if Hicks and Gillette hadn't screwed it up. But, I always kind of feel bad for him in that way. But
I
blame Alberto Aquilani.
Yeah, exactly. Player by player. I don't know if we were quite there where we are now.
Well, no, not where we are now, but but
we're other fantastic.
Mascherano and Alonso on the same team. That would have been pretty nice.
David Ingo. Yeah,
I was going to say no depth though. You take any one of them out of the team, even the Torres Gerrard years. Like if one of them was missing, we're like,
oh well, you mentioned Ngog. I remember those years. I remember keep hoping that he was gonna blow up at some point.
Yeah, but
it wasn't never happening.
That's how it was with Ryan Babel.
Yeah.
He's still playing.
There's a lot of highlights that show up, and Ryan Babel's on the highlights. It's kind of weird.
He had some weird goals.
Yeah.
I think that's why I liked him so much.
So,
but I mean, this is a great team. We're spoiled right now.
So this feels like a good time to close. And I feel a good time to just kind of give acknowledgement to the new song, because I think we really are glad that Jurgen is a Red. I think that goes well. It doesn't go without saying. We should say it. We should sing it next time. We'll be back next week. Daz is not singing it next time. We'll be back next week after the Everton game.
You lose your lost listener. Hello? Is this thing? Hello?
No, I need to be primed. We'll practice in the pub first. Thank you, Daz. Thank you, Enrique. Thank you, Sean, for joining us. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with a friend. Follow us on Twitter. We only tweet and retweet from sources we think are credible. Hence, we probably won't be retweeting the Gerard Moreno hamstring injury thing yet.